Travel influencers will tell you that you'll get your money back, but you'll never again be in your 20s doing something fun and exciting in a foreign country. Finance influencers will tell you that you should start investing as soon as you have enough money in an emergency fund because compound interest makes millionaires.
And that's the beauty of compound interest.
So, what do you do? How do you use your money? What is the right course of action here? What none of these influencers will tell you is that to do both of these things, you need money. You need money.
As the cost of living bites, 3 meals a day has become a luxury for millions.
Consumer sentiment hit a record low last month, as new polling shows 42% of Americans are struggling to remain where they are financially, nearly double from a year ago, and 85% think the economy is getting worse.
In 2022, more than 1 in 5 people were living in poverty in the UK. In the US, 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. These people are struggling to heat their homes and put food on the table. They don't have the means to travel, not to mention save or invest. Socioeconomic factors play a huge part in our ability to climb the economic ladder. Those in really impoverished areas do not have the same tools and resources as those born into wealth. And what about students fresh out of university without a penny to their name, with stacks of student loan debt following behind them? What about the actor or writer? They're working minimum wage jobs to try and fund their passions. Every society needs art to truly flourish, but most artists are having to battle an uphill financial battle with only a dream keeping them going. These people are completely ignored by the influencer community. An entire population snubbed. These people want to be in their 20s traveling the world, but they instead need to be in their 20s paying off their massive credit card debt. They want to be able to start investing for their future, but instead they need to be able to afford to put food on the table. The fact of the matter is, if you are able to easily save up 3 to 6 months worth of expenses for an emergency fund, you are already doing much better than most people. If you are able to fund a European holiday with the assurance that the money will come back, you are already doing much better than most people. Okay. Enough intro. We have enough intro. It's long enough. The people are bored. Now time for my story. So basically, I started my financial journey 2 years ago after moving to London for the second time. I originally moved here in 2018, was here for almost 2 years, then had to move back to Canada because of the pandemic and because my original visa had expired. So I spent 7 months in Canada saving my money to come back here, working my ass off to come back here. And I finally got back here and I decided to finally, because I wasn't, moving countries for the first time in years, I finally started down the path of learning how to be financially literate. So what did I do? I went onto YouTube and I found financial influencers, and I learned all about the stock market and how to be smart with my money. I learned about index funds and compound interest, and I was so angry. I was angry that I wasn't taught about this in school. I was angry that I didn't know about this when I inherited a ton of money from my father, who passed away when I was in my early 20s. So I spent all that money traveling the world and moving to London. I was furious but also impatient to get on the compound interest bandwagon. I wanted to start accumulating wealth ASAP. The only problem was I didn't have the money to. I did not have the money to invest. I had just moved to London. I had £1,000 in my bank account and I spent a few hundred of that on the stock market. And that was my first mistake. I followed these financial influencers who told me the first thing I needed to do to start gaining wealth was invest in the stock market. And that was my biggest mistake. A year later, the stock market started falling and it hasn't stopped since.
I'm gonna give you a scenario that does not relate to my life, but it could relate to someone else's. Say someone else did exactly the same thing as me. Say they invested most of their savings into the S&P 500. Say they live in the States. They had a medical emergency. They broke their hip. They fell down a flight of stairs. They got into a car accident and they didn't have insurance. Because they're creative. Like me, I'm a creative, right? If I was living in the States, I probably wouldn't have insurance. And say they needed to pay off their medical bills, but they put all of their money into the stock market, which has now decreased in value. They would have lost money and they would have been in a very precarious position financially because of this. I want to make it very clear. Investing in the stock market is a good idea. It is. Financially, it is an excellent decision that you can make. And if you want to learn about it, there are tons of gurus on YouTube who will tell you how to do it. But the one thing you cannot do, the one thing you absolutely should never do, is invest in the stock market without an emergency fund, without any other money in savings or liquidity. I feel like the vibe on YouTube is very much heavy on investing. Personal finance YouTubers are targeting audiences who have money. The trap that people can get into is if they don't have money and they follow these personal influencers, they could be in that position of that hypothetical person in the States who had that medical emergency and invested all of their money into stocks and shares. After I realized the mistake I made, I tailored my money habits to accommodate my financial situation. I am an artist, I am that writer, I am that actor, I am that self-employed person who doesn't have a lot of money. And because of that, I needed to tailor my financial goals to my income level. If you're like me, someone who does not have a high income, someone who is a creative, someone who cannot afford to invest, the one thing you need to do, the most important thing you need to do, is increase your disposable income. And you can only do that by decreasing your living expenses and increasing your income. I've decreased my living expenses. I'm living in a guardianship flat. A guardianship flat is when a property isn't being used and they need to prevent squatters, so they allow people to live in the property for very cheap. I'm living in an office right now. Other options are flat sitting. I know people that do flat sitting, where essentially they look after places when people go on holidays, they feed their dogs and cats. That option only really works if you work from home. If you don't work from home, then that might not be an option for you. We also need to destigmatize living with your parents. We need to destigmatize that in the West. It is normal for people in other cultures to live with their parents into adulthood. It should be normal for us too, especially during this cost of living crisis and especially during this housing crisis and rental crisis where people can't even afford to heat their homes, nonetheless put a roof over their head. Cut costs wherever you need to. I'm going to be honest, I have lived in much nicer places in my life. Living in this office is not sunshine and rainbows. It is very cramped. I'm living with my boyfriend and it's very cramped. But we're not planning to live here forever. We're using it as an opportunity to save money. So maybe you just need to take that risk. I've been able to save 30% of my income while living in this guardianship, and I would not have been able to do that at our old place. Broke Finance was created as a way of sharing my journey of financial independence and financial literacy without being caught up in the trap of investor influencers. I want to focus on real practical ways that helped me become financially secure, because financially secure to me doesn't mean being a millionaire. It just means not having the stress that comes with being poor and being broke. It means having money set aside for an emergency and having that reassurance that I'll be okay. If you like this idea, if you want to follow my journey, please do subscribe. I would really appreciate it. All right, see you next time. Bye.